it helps people to develop the life they want, because if we can learn how we use our own physical energies and how those energies then go out and influence, I guess, the state of reality around us, then we have far more influence over the reality that we create.
Today's guest is Linda Eastburn, an entrepreneur, author, intuitive, and educator with over 30 years of experience in helping others tap into their inner guidance and manifesting success. Linda, I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, with that said, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Oh, there have been several. But one of the things that I remember most is I'm a real estate investor, as well as all of these other things that you said. That's part of the entrepreneurship that I've done. But there was a situation that came up that I intuitively knew or understood that a piece of property was going to sell for a certain price. I just intuitively knew this. And I just made all of the preparations, stepped out on a limb, got the loan in place, and ended up purchasing this property for the exact price that I was intuitively aware of. So that was a pretty courageous moment, because it was a financial obligation I was putting myself in, that if it had not gone the way that I intuitively saw it, I'm afraid it would have put me in kind of dire straits financially. So that was a courageous moment I had.
Oh, wow. And just trusting yourself, I guess, to listen to what's happened intuitively and do it.
Yeah, I'd been teaching the intuitive skills for a while when that happened. And I think it was a matter of just stepping out and trusting that piece of information. There was another time when I was told to sell a large amount of the properties I had. And this was just before the crash we had here in the US in 2007, 2008 time period. It was about 2003, 4, somewhere around there, that I was distinctly told, just sell all your properties. And it's like, okay, that's my bread and butter. That's what I've got my life savings in. If I sell it, how am I going to make a living? But I was able to walk away from that. And there again, it was trusting, but that was pretty courageous too.
Yes, I'm sure. So, with that said, how did you get started with intuitive work and manifesting?
Well, it was, I'd always been a curious person, just curious about the mysteries of life and how people can know things. And I had a little bit of that skill, but I wouldn't say I was well versed at directing my intuitive skills in a way that was, on command. I couldn't do it. I might have an impression here and there, but I really hadn't developed that as a skill. So I took a class, and in that class, we learned a lot of self awareness and meditation, and we really didn't learn manifestation, but a little bit of the intuitive work we learned in that class. But I sort of took those exercises and continued doing them and continued exploring until I finally took a hypnosis class as well. And that just took me into yet a deeper place. And then I started practicing with people to try to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more intuitive. But I'm really picky about knowing for sure that I'm right or I'm wrong. But it was really after a conference I attended that I was able to prove to myself how accurate this was or not. It was just a conference, and there was a speaker there. It didn't have anything to do with being intuitive, but it had to do with being a remote viewer. This was before all of the U.S. remote viewers had come out with their books and were speaking and doing conferences and things like that. This was long before that. But he had been to another country where they had developed a remote viewing program. I don't think they were even calling it remote viewing at that time. But they had explained to him how they were part of this military operation where they learned to use their psychic ability to actually see things like submarines or military bases or all kinds of things that they. So this was his presentation. And I'm thinking, wow, I've been learning this intuitive work, but I've been learning it more from a spiritual point of view. And I'd never really thought about utilizing that towards some just physical location. But I understood that if I could do it toward a physical location, then I would have some proof if I was right or wrong. So I lived in a city of about 200,000 people. I don't know how many houses are here, but a lot. So I decided to take the phone book. Back in the days when we actually had a physical phone book, this was even before
Yes.
cell phones. So I took the phone book and I just opened up the phone book and I would pick out an address that had a phone number, assuming that there was a house there because it has a phone number, right? And I would pick streets that I had absolutely no idea what they looked like or what side of town they were on. I just pick a random address. And I would sit down and I would go into this kind of deep hypnotic state, kind of the way Edgar Casey did his work, where he would just go into a deep remote viewing type of place, a psychic place inside of him. And I would connect with that house. And I told myself to be in the middle of the road, look at that property and just describe what I saw, color of the roof, style of the house, anything that would set this house aside from any other house around it. So the first time I did it, I recognized that the house I was looking at it was not the house that I was supposed to be looking at. Now that was an intuitive impression in and of itself because I knew this was the wrong house. It was a baby blue colored house, and this was an era of time when we didn't have many baby blue colored houses in our area. Now it's a little bit
Mhm.
more common perhaps, but at that time it wasn't. But I saw this baby blue colored house and I knew that is not the property you're supposed to be looking at. So I just erased that from my mind, went back in, looked at the property that I thought was the one that I wanted to see. And it was kind of strange. I told myself to be in the middle of the road, but I actually ended up being just really, really, right on top of the siding. And I was so close I could see the paint run in the siding, and it was a light color. I think I saw it as white or light gray.
Mhm.
So I had to step back to see the rest of the house, and I saw a black roof. I saw a one-car garage. I think it was on the right side of the house. I saw a one-car garage. Saw a little sidewalk going up to the front porch, and on the concrete, I saw this fake green carpet that was like looks like grass. That was also popular at that time, covering
Mhm.
this small little concrete porch, a wrought iron post at the corner of the porch, a picture, a window that was, kind of in the middle of the living room, looked like was probably a picture window. And there was one tree in the yard, and it was just perfectly placed. And so I had a decent description of the house. And so I came out of that session and I wrote down everything that I perceived. And later that day, I drove by the house and I was amazed. The baby blue colored house was right next door. So I was on target, but I was distracted probably by the baby blue colored house. But as I looked at this house, I got two things wrong. The siding was either a light gray or white, and I'd seen the opposite of that, but it was really a similar color. And then the garage was transposed. It was on the left side rather than the right. It was a one car garage. The roof was black. The picture window was perfect. The little grassy, carpeted porch was right. The white wrought iron post was correct. The tree in the yard was correct. And it was just, I was kind of amazed. But from that point on, I started doing that daily. And I would, gather up all of the houses I had done for a week, and then make a trip around town and look at them and see if I got them correct or not. What I found was either I was spot on or completely off. There was no middle ground.
Mhm.
And also I noticed that it was about an 85% success rate in being able to see those correctly. So I knew that I had some accuracy there. It wasn't 100%, and I don't know if anyone's 100% on anything, but it was accurate enough that I knew that I could teach this because I knew how I had developed it, and I knew that there were many ways to get to the information. One was through a hypnotic state, one was through this type of remote viewing type of protocol. In other ways, you can just go into a meditative stage. You can get the information through dreaming. And there's so many ways to get to this information. But the one thing that I did know before I started teaching that it was very reliable.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. Just to be able to, just have those impressions, let's say, the
Yes.
thought, whatever comes to you, the download, however you want to word it. Wow, that's incredible. So is that what inspired you to write your book, SPI, Your Way to Power Success? And what is the core message?
That was the latest book that I've written. I've written actually 4 books. The first
Mhm,
book that I wrote was about 20 years ago, and that book was rather simplistic, and it
mhm,
just kind of told my journey of going into this. Then I wrote another book about 10 years after that called With Heart, how compassion links us to with the universe. I wrote another book kind of on more on the mysteries of life. And then this last book I just wrote in the last year, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, and it stands for Superpowered Insight.
mhm,
And that was a book that really gets more into the physics of manifesting. And
mhm,
it helps people to develop the life they want, because if we can learn how we use our own physical energies and how those energies then go out and influence, I guess, the state of reality around us, then we have far more influence over the reality that we create. So I looked at my own life, and especially that house that I said that I knew what I was going to sell for, and I went ahead and jumped out on courageously and got the loan to buy the house, and was able to indeed purchase that. I looked at that whole sequence of events that happened around that, and I thought, how did that occur? How was it that I knew it? How is it that every single thing that I needed to fall into place to get that loan and to purchase the house fell into place? So I sort of back engineered my personal experiences, because that's sort of been the story of my life, to be able to manifest the things that are present. And I could see that there was always a point or a moment where there was a knowing, but there also has to be action taken. But I knew what was happening, down the road. It was in the future that I knew what was going to happen. Thus, it would influence my actions today to enable it to secure that, to make sure that that did happen or didn't happen. I mean, it goes both directions. Sometimes we have warnings and we don't want something to happen. So the action could be in either direction. So I back engineered my life, and I worked with a physicist to come up with some of the real basic things that we do all the time, but we don't even realize we're doing them. That's like we are this person that has this light essence about us. I mean, those are measurable biophotons. And with those biophotons comes a very interesting torsion energy that goes into the past and the future, but most of us aren't aware of it. I think what happened when I was developing my intuitive skills is I became very aware of this energy and was able to kind of travel down those lines between the past and the future to be able to see those more readily, but not just be able to see them, but to take them to heart and be able to utilize that energy to be able to manifest more effectively, which is what the book is all about.
How has intuitive guided your success in business and real estate?
That's been a huge part of my life, and it's been a place that I've been able to witness it often the most. But when I started teaching and stepping out and doing the intuitive work as well, I saw it just as relevant there. But it was from a different place. I spent many years, and still do to some degree, as a health intuitive, helping people to understand the body mind connection, and body mind spirit, how we're not isolated as just a mechanical physical system, that everything is interrelated. So I do teach people how to be health intuitives, and I teach people how to understand their body more, importantly, how to be intuitive with their own physical body. But I also saw it there. So that was another business that I created. And that was something that, oftentimes, just I would manifest what I needed to understand what it was that I was going to be teaching, or what was going to be coming down the line for me. I remember at one point, I was doing hypnosis, and I realized that I was going into a very deep state at certain points whereby my I would get information more accurately. And I really wanted to understand what my brain was doing. I wanted to understand the brainwave system that was happening. And out of the blue, I got a call from an organization that were doing a study. I didn't know these people. I'd never met these people. And they said, we'd like to do some research with you. But you would have to come to our facility, which is about 2 or 3 hours away, and spend the day, and we would have to measure your brain waves. And I thought, well, this is amazing. I mean, it was just like I would just put it out there and voila,
Mm.
it would just kind of fall in my lap. So it was that sort of thing also that I wanted to back engineer when I wrote the book, but to understand more, how did I influence that? How did they
Mm.
even know about me? It was like I wasn't doing much of anything at that time. But it was like that sort of thing would just fall in my lap. I was just right timing, right place, right everything. And eventually I started understanding, that there's a part of us that can be in the flow of things. And that comes back to that torsion energy that works with the past, present, and future. And when we're in the
Mhm.
flow of that, it's kind of timing. That they needed subjects to study and I needed to understand what my brain waves were doing. So it was just perfect timing for both of us. And that opened a lot of doors for me.
Wow. You know, gosh, isn't that amazing? Just pure amazing. Yeah,
It's been an interesting life for sure.
I bet. For someone who struggles to trust their intuition, where should they begin? I mean, me listening to that thinking, oh, I'd like to have things just fall in my lap. How do I start? There must be people out there, the listeners that are listening, they would
Well,
love to be able to do that.
a lot of it has to do with just being really coherent
Mm.
with what we are manifesting. And I don't know that that is something you can do other than feeling your way through it. When you're coherent with what you're manifesting, with what you're wanting,
Mm.
you become kind of synced with it, interconnected with it in a way that you can feel that interconnection. When I started doing the intuitive work, I had no idea how to connect with another person, how to read their energy field. I'd had my energy feel read, and I understood it could be done because they were so accurate, and I wanted to do that as well. But I had no idea how to connect with them, how to know I was really connected with their energy field. And eventually, what I found was that kind of comes from the heart. And I learned that the Tibetan monks, when they get into a certain meditative state and their heart is in a state of deep compassion, that they go into this really heightened focused state of mind. And that happened to me spontaneously once early on in my career. That happened spontaneously. And I recognized that it was the heart that leads intuition, not the brain. So I could intellectually do all kinds of things that would develop my focus and attention, and I could practice this and I could remote view those houses all day long. But it was really being coherent from my heart that made those manifestation situations occur. And it gives me goosebumps even to think about it today. I understand what it feels like to get into that state. So what I teach today is not just the basics of developing your mind and your skills. Develop your heart and your compassion and understand what your need or your desire is, what you're looking for. Because as I teach manifestation classes, people may want a new Mercedes car or a new luxury house or something
Mm.
like that. They're looking for those things. But I say, well, how will this serve your life? What is the need behind that? Because it's your intent and your need behind things that really go out and direct a lot of our energy. That's the potent energy that we have. So
Mm.
when you need to heal and you need to understand and you need to supply your needs, there are all kinds of ways that you can get in touch with that part of you. But if you don't get in touch with that first, it's probably futile to just learn how to be a psychic person.
So interesting. And yeah, absolutely. People, what's the intention behind it? I love that piece of it. Absolutely.
So it's very important to understand your intentions, because intentions will be the directing agent of the energy. No matter what you write on a piece of paper, no matter what thought is in your head, it's going to be that intention behind it that will be the directive force.
So, can you share a moment of synchronicity that confirmed you were on the right path?
Well, there was early on when I was learning to be intuitive. I had decided, because I was so invested in being a real estate agent, and we had a real estate company, and I was the suit and briefcase kind of lady, and everyone knew me as that person. I knew me as that person. My family knew me as that person. And I recognized I was really going to have to get out of this environment sometimes in order to develop this other person I wanted to be, which was far more a spiritual person and one who understood these mysteries that I was exploring. So there was a small Victorian, kind of a touristy little town, very small little artsy town, not a couple of hours away from where I lived. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice? I would like to have just a little shop there. I could have books and gifts, and I could do little intuitive sessions, and I could change my perception of me, but also I could practice this skill in a safe environment where I could be anyone I wanted to be because no one knew me as this business person. So one day I was talking to a friend, and this is kind of a long story, but it's relevant because it deals with being in the full flow of your intuition. But I was talking to a friend, and she said, I understand when I have a dream, and the next day I see whatever I was dreaming about on a billboard. I know I'm on the right track. And I thought, well, that's strange. I've never had that happen to me before. But this night I had a dream, and I had a dream about this certain brand of peanut butter, which I'd never purchased and don't even remember seeing it in a store. But anyway, that was the dream that I had. And also, besides having that dream, I had this impression that morning to go to this little town just out of the blue, to just drive to this little town and see, kind of look around, see if there were any shops. But it was a strong enough impression that, I thought, okay, I'm going to get ready and just go. And I didn't even tell my husband. I mean, that was unheard of. Normally I would not have gone 2 hours out of my town without at least letting him know where I was at. But I just took off and went to this little town. And on the way, there was a billboard with this peanut butter on it. And I thought, oh, I'm on the right track. Here I am. So when I got there, I made one sweep around the town, and I saw this nice little storefront. It had been an old grocery store, and it had the double wooden doors and big tall windows, and it had a for lease sign in the front of it. Now, I had a certain price in mind that I didn't want to go over, and this was my budget. And I thought, I will never find anything that has everything I need in there because I was going to have to stay at the store some. I needed a bathroom with a tub or shower. I needed a little place, a little nook to put at least a bed for just sleep there. I also needed, a kitchen. I needed to be able to cook while I was there. So I knew I could not find all of those things in a small little shop that would accommodate my budget and my needs. So anyway, I found this little storefront. It had a sign in the window before cell phones, so I drove downtown and called. They could show it to me in an hour. I had lunch, drove back. When I went in, it was just perfect. I mean, it had these beautiful hardwood floors. It was a tall, tall ceiling with the tin painted, ceiling. It was perfect. I walked around a counter, and there was a stove, a refrigerator, and a sink. I thought, well, it has a full kitchen. Oh my goodness. Then I walked to the back.
Wow.
There was a perfect little spot for a day bed or something to sleep on. And then there was a door, I assumed might be a closet. I opened it up, and there was a full bathroom with a tub and shower. And I thought, okay, it has everything I need, and it's ideal. It's absolutely perfect. The only place I looked at, I asked the price, and it was the exact amount that I had set for my budget. So I thought, okay, so I drove home, talked to my husband. We went back down immediately and leased the property, and there it was. But what happened at this place? Not only was this synchronistically led to be there, what happened while I was there was I developed my skill, but there was also this very profound moment. Now, up to that time, I was completely against doing any kind of health intuitive work because I knew nothing about the physical body. I had no knowledge whatsoever of this, and I didn't want to harm anyone, nor did I want to, to do even with good intentions, even harm someone. So it was a Sunday, and I didn't have the shop open. It was a Sunday afternoon. The shop was closed, and a woman called and wanted an intuitive session. I said, that would be fine. We can do this. And where my little daybed was, I had a little table, and just for decoration, I had this little crystal sitting there. For some reason that night, I was going to do it up front. There was an antique table I had for sale, actually, and had various gift items on it. And I moved some things aside, and I felt like putting that little crystal up at that table, so I did. And she got there, and we're sitting at the table, and she asked a lot of questions. And like always, my intuitive skills were not that strong. So it was like I would do the work and get an answer. Didn't feel overly confident with it, but we talked about that. But I just would give her whatever into my consciousness about whatever the question was. And it was near the end of that session that she asked, can you get in touch with my guardian angel? And I thought, I have no idea if I can get in touch with your guardian angel because I've never tried that before. But the only thing I can
Mm.
do is just see what comes in. Well, I immediately knew to pick up this little crystal that I set on the table, and I put it between my palms of both of my hands. And instantly there was this sensation that ran up my arms and into my heart, and my heart just opened. And it was the deepest level of compassion I think I have ever felt in my life. And suddenly I was in a state where these words just started flowing out of my mouth. I could not get the words out fast enough. And later, I understood I had just gotten into a gamma brainwave state in a very spiritual level that was just so connected with her and her situation. She had an immune disorder and was very compromised, but you couldn't. I didn't know this about her. That's the first time I'd met her, and none of her questions was about her health. Nothing. But a health intuitive session just came through, and when I
Mm.
was finished, I opened my eyes and she's looking at me in awe, and I'm thinking, where did that come from? And she's thinking, where did that come from? Because it was a completely opposite state of what I'd been in just before that. So this moment that happened in this particular location that I intuitively knew to go down and rent and show up at completely changed the trajectory of my intuitive career because I became a health intuitive, and it dictated everything that I did from that point forward. And it became something that I taught other people how to get into that same state and to be able to, to really trust your heart and your compassion within your heart. And when you're in that level of intuition, the information is just extremely accurate. So that was a moment that that felt like I was in the flow from start to finish, and it just put me on a completely different path.
So, how is your approach to manifesting different from what people usually hear?
Well, what I usually hear on with manifestation, and of course everyone has a different technique in a different way, but
Mhm.
visualization is what is generally utilized. And visualization is a good tool. I think it is an extremely good tool. But I think what it leaves out of that picture is how we use our own essence of light, how we use it in a focused laser-like fashion, and then how we spin that light past, present, and future to be in the flow. So I think it's an incomplete process generally when we try to manifest just through visualization. And also we don't add the heart into that often.
Mm.
We just it's a mental projection where we're seeing an image of something. There again, it keeps our attention upon that. It keeps us moving and directing toward it. Vibrating toward manifesting is also a very strong part of what people talk about, which I think is vital also. But what does that
Mhm.
mean, and how do you do it, and how do you know if you're doing it, and how do you know that you're there? That's maybe a little bit of the difference in what I do and what some people do anywhere. What I've learned in the past from others is to be able to be as sure intuitively of where your energy field is as I am whenever I'm intuitively working with someone else. You have to be so connected with what it is that you're manifesting. And you know what? It's not what you're visualizing often, because when I went to that little
Mhm.
shop in that small Victorian town and did the health intuitive session that spontaneously came through, never in my wildest dreams did I envision doing that. But my intent was to develop my intuitive ability to the top of my capacity. So that intent is what directed that activity, not necessarily my vision.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love that. Really love that. And that's just a pure example of what is the tension behind it. What is one simple way listeners can start using intuition in their daily life?
I think, well, an easy way, and this is something I recommend for everyone to start recording their dreams. I would suggest just write down your intuitive question before sleep, read it about 3 times, set it beside your bed. The minute you wake up, just record every detail of the dream you've had, and you'll be amazed. Eventually your mind will begin to understand that you are using your dream state to access this intuitive level, because that's where we go when we're asleep. We're not in the conscious state, so we're in a deeper state of mind, and that's where the information is going to come from. So that's a really easy way to begin. And don't get discouraged because it may take a month or two, It may take a while for you to remember your dreams and remember to write them down. And then it may take a while before there's a connection, because you have to have this ability for everything to be in sync to get that information. But that's one way, and that's an extremely easy way. The other way that I would recommend is to begin meditating and going into those inner level states as well. Just like when we sleep, we go into those inner states. But most people think of meditation as just quieting the mind and getting into a really gentle place inside of us, which is a good practice, and it's a very healthy practice. But one way that you can open up intuition is, before you go into that meditative state, write down a question, listen for an answer. Now, that answer may come back as an auditory answer. I'm a real auditory person, so it often will come back in an auditory answer for me. But for you, it might come back as a visual. You might get a sense of something, or just a knowing of something. But that's another very easy way to get started and allowing your intuition to talk with you. Basically, what you're doing is developing a relationship with your inner self. Awake and we're conscious, we're in a relationship with everything physical around us, but we're often ignoring that inner part of ourselves. So in order to be more intuitive, we have to get in touch with that inner part and develop a relationship, and most of all, develop communication skills with it. Because the same ability to communicate externally, that's what you're going to take into your intuition with you. So make certain that you're precise with what you are interpreting, and then keep journals, because unless you know that you're getting answers back that you can trust, you're never going to continue doing it. So you have to be able to show yourself, yeah, that does work. Yeah, that is correct. That is right. Yes, I need to listen to that. And you'll be able to prove to yourself how accurate it is. And if you start out at a 10% accuracy rate, then increase that. Start perfecting it. Start moving it into a higher level of accuracy, because it's just a matter of tweaking it. And I think that's what I did when I started, because I was not a very intuitive person when I began. But I would continue tweaking that and continue refining it until eventually I knew I could trust it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to keep trying, tweaking until you can trust it. And I absolutely love that, because that's where you're building, like anything, a muscle, a strength. Absolutely. Yes. Linda, this has been a powerful conversation. So if there was one key takeaway that you want every listener to walk away with, what would that be?
Well, I think the biggest message is you can actually have more of what you want in life. You're not a victim. You can have more of what you want in life, but you do have to take the responsibility to start down that road to get it. And I think that's the key, is don't just be idle. Start listening to your intuition, because whatever path it is that you're wanting to go down, if you listen and you allow your intuition to guide, it knows exactly where it is, it knows how to find it, and it knows the right timing with it. So I think it's just a matter of beginning to utilize those inner resources that we have. You are a powerful light source from within, and as long as you get in touch with that with good intentions, it will always be there directing and guiding. But you have to stay on track.
Fantastic. So where can the listeners find you online and connect with your work?
Yeah, you can find me at my website is just lindaeastburn.com. You can also find Inspire Your Way to Power and Success on Amazon. That's an easy one to find. I'm also on Facebook, just Linda Eastburn on Facebook. And I'm all over the place. If you Google me, you're going to find me, because I'm everywhere.
And the links will be in the show notes, so please do go ahead and connect with Linda.
Honestly, I just am thankful to be on the show. Thank you for that. And just say that it's the most rewarding work I have done. And I've done a lot of real estate work, but the most rewarding work I've done truly has been the love heart connection that I've done with a lot of clients and students that I've had. And I just really appreciate those opportunities that I've been given to share with other people.
That's incredible. So thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and insights today. I know this conversation will truly make a difference to so many listeners. I really appreciate you for being here. Linda Eastburn.
Yes, thank you.
We are all about Create the Courage to be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
I think when we're reluctant to step out on anything, it takes courage, of course. but the difference between having the courage to do something and not having the courage to do something is the difference between living a life that is less than what we want. So I think it's self-love that propels us into the courage that we have to have.